It's the first public demonstration of the world's most sophisticated passenger jet.
Okay, you're at 100 feet there.
100.
The Airbus A320 is being introduced to the world.
Mesdames et messieurs, votre attention s'il vous plaît. L'Airbus A320 arrive.
That introduction turns into a fatal calamity.
30.
Can't be.
30.
It could not possibly have come at a worse time for Airbus. The crash was a major embarrassment.
There's enormous pressure on investigators. If Airbus is to survive, they must find the answer to one crucial question.
Was it the pilot or was it the plane?
It's 2:30 in the afternoon on June the 26th, 1988. An unusual charter flight prepares to depart Basel-Mulhouse Airport in France, near the Swiss border.
Anti-ice.
Captain Michel Asseline is one of Air France's most distinguished pilots.
On.
Though only 44, he's the head of pilot training for the company's newest plane, the Airbus A320. It's only the third of its kind to roll off the assembly line. Captain Asseline flew this very aircraft from the factory in Toulouse just 2 days earlier.
I was in charge of the launching of the 320 in Air France. The company used me to promote the aircraft. The speeches to make, I was constantly on the television, on newspaper.
Airshow 296 would like to roll, please.
Asseline's first officer, Pierre Mazière, is also a senior Air France pilot.
Airshow 296.
He's invited 2 off-duty flight attendants to come along for the ride on this special flight. The aircraft is booked to perform a low-altitude flyover at a local air show. There are 130 people on board this A320, which is unusual for an air show demonstration flight. They have no luggage. For some, it's their first time on an airplane. There are even children, like 7-year-old Mariama Barry, unaccompanied by their parents. After the flyover, they will be taken on a sightseeing tour around Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Western Europe. Most got their tickets as promotional gifts from a local bank and newspaper. Jean-Marie Schreiber is a young reporter covering the launch of the new plane.
As a journalist, I was thrilled to be on the flight, to have a chance to see how people reacted inside the plane.
Another journalist aboard, Jean-Claude Bosch, has been busy recording the event.
As I got on the plane, I thought, great, this is going to be an unforgettable experience. And it really was unforgettable.
The A320 is the first civil aircraft to use fly-by-wire, a cutting-edge technology that computerizes flight controls. The system had previously mainly been used by the military.
On the fly-by-wire system, the pilot essentially flies the computer, and the computer flies the aircraft.
Fly-by-wire alters the relationship between pilot and plane. It gives computers the ability to override human inputs to prevent pilot error. The A320's flight computer won't let its human operators do anything it determines to be dangerous. Airbus has become the first civil aircraft maker to embrace this technology. It hopes this will give it an edge over its longtime American rival, Boeing. In its first public presentation, Airbus has a lot on the line.
Okay, tell me what you want in terms of speed and altitude.
Okay, then take off right turn, We go nice and easy to find out things.
We tried to demonstrate the capability of this aircraft. To say we wanted to show off, not exactly. We wanted to make a good job, and we were sure to make a good job.
Once we identify the airfield, we extend flaps to 3. We'll do the flyover at 100, landing gear out, and you just leave it up to me. I'll give it Alpha Max. Done it 20 times.
Okay.
Captain Asseline is planning a breathtaking maneuver. A low-altitude, nose-high flyby at Alpha Max. This is the slowest a plane can fly without stalling.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome aboard this Airbus A320, which was put into service just 2 days ago. We will soon be taking off for a short sightseeing flight, which will start from the Habsheim Flying Club, and then we'll be flying around Mont Blanc. I wish you a very pleasant flight. That's done.
ACF 296Q, clear for takeoff. Runway 16.
We're rolling.
Take off. Go.
Parameters normal. 100.
100.
It's already requesting climb. You see that?
Yes, that happens. I know the bug.
V1. Rotate. Gear up, flaps 1. After take-up checklist completed.
It's only a 5-minute flight to Habsheim Airfield, where the airshow is being held. For this sleepy Alsatian town, the airshow is the highlight of the summer.
The airshow drew more than 5,000 people. There was significant interest from the public.
The airfield is so small, its coordinates aren't stored in the plane's navigation database, so the pilots must find it by sight.
You're at 8 nautical miles. You'll soon see it. There's the highway.
We leave the highway to the left, don't we? No, to the right of the highway.
It's slightly to the right of the highway.
There's the airfield. You've got it, have you?
The pilots have spotted the airfield late. They will have to hurry to descend to the planned altitude for the flyover at the airshow. A crowd is forming at the runway.
Air Charter 296, good afternoon.
Habsheim, hello. We are coming into view of the airfield for the flyover.
Yes, I can see you. You're cleared. The sky is clear.
Gear down.
Okay, we're going in for low altitude, low speed flyover. 296.
Roger.
Flaps 2.
Quebec November Hotel Absane, Fox Echo 984.
Okay. 984. Put in 984. Flaps 3.
Flaps 3.
That's the airfield. You confirm?
Affirmative.
Flight 296 makes a gentle turn to line up with the runway. The pilots must now lose more altitude and speed to get into position for the flyover.
200. 200.
Mesdames et messieurs, votre attention s'il vous plaît. L'Airbus A320 arrive.
Okay, you're at 100 feet there.
100.
Watch it.
100.
Watch it.
The aircraft is now at the planned altitude. For Asseline, this will be the most delicate part of the maneuver. He must keep the plane in a stable position with the nose up, but not too high.
I looked at the ground and said, look, he's not high enough, because you could see the grass right out your window.
Okay. I'm okay there. Disconnect auto throttle.
He disables one of the plane's safety features so that the computer won't speed up the slow-moving plane. Only now, Captain Asselinean sees a danger that threatens the lives of everyone on board. The A320's low-speed flyover at the Habsheim airfield is suddenly not going according to plan. There's a forest in the path of Captain Asselinean's plane.
30.
Take off, go around power.
He selects the highest thrust setting and pulls back on the controls, expecting the aircraft to pull up. But the plane keeps dropping.
J'ai commencé à voir par le hublot des branches d'arbres.
I started to see through the window tree branches. I was astonished. You can imagine being on a trail in a large vehicle, a bumpy trail, driving at 80 or 100 kilometers an hour, and you're shaking from all sides. It was like that. I was saying to myself, the plane has to stay in one piece, because if the plane stays whole, we'll be okay. If it breaks up, we're done for.
S'il casse, c'est fichu.
Still full of fuel, the right wing of the jet is sheared off. The fuel ignites immediately on impact.
We stopped very quickly. And on the ground, I broke my seat, just because I was holding very firmly. I broke my seat, and I could see a lot of flames all over. But about 20 meters high flames around the cockpit, smoke coming from everywhere.
The first officer is badly injured.
And there's a lot of blood. And even with the full harness, he hit something in front of him.
What the hell have you done?
I don't know. I don't understand.
There was a moment of silence when the plane finally stopped.
Incredibly, the fuselage is still in one piece. Everyone has survived the impact, but they're not out of danger yet.
Alors là, je me penche.
So I lean to the right, and I see red flames. The windows were red. And I think, we held together, but we're going to burn to death.
Mais on va mourir brûlés.
Then we heard somebody say, get out, there's a fire.
Sortez, sortez, il y a le feu.
Evacuate the aircraft. Hurry, I'll deal with him.
Only 2 exits can be used for evacuation. The rest are engulfed in flames. But thick branches block one of the doors, making evacuation difficult. In the chaos of the cabin, some passengers struggle with their seatbelts. Marie-Françoise Froche is one of the last passengers to leave her seat. She comes across Mariama Barry, who's trapped in her seat.
Mariama
Barry, she was 7, 8. After the accident, people pushing toward the exit pushed on the backs of the seats, the backs that folded over her, and then she was trapped by her seatbelt. No one saw her. She was forgotten.
On l'a pas vue, on l'a oubliée.
But it's too late. Both are overcome by smoke before they can get off the plane. In the cockpit, Captain Asselinean struggles to get his injured first officer out of the burning aircraft.
I took him from his seat and belt him, carried, I don't know how, and I put him in a slide. When the passenger, all of them, the last one, was out of the plane, I saw my crew. They told me, Captain, they are all out. I couldn't believe it.
But the crew is wrong. Not all the passengers have made it out. Marie-Françoise Froche, Mariama Barry, and another young boy are dead. In addition to the tragic loss of life, the accident is a PR disaster for Airbus.
The crash could not possibly have come at a worse time for Airbus. They were trying out this new concept, which they had touted very widely as a new level of safety for civil flight. And here's a pilot going and crashing one. For those who actually saw the accident, and it was broadcast on the news media throughout the world the same evening that it happened, there was amazement. The crash was a major embarrassment.
Investigators from France's Accident Investigation Bureau are on the scene of the crash within hours. They need to know why this demonstration flight ended in disaster. They recover the plane's data and voice recorders. Claude Béchet will head the investigation.
Was it the pilot or was it the plane? We need to know.
Like the pilots of Flight 296, he also works for Air France as an airline captain.
Let's get to work.
Which is unusual for a state investigator.
At that time, I was still an airline pilot, and I was in New York when the accident happened, and they sent me a telegram to ask me to come back to Paris as soon as possible.
Apart from the flight recorders, investigators have a remarkable piece of evidence to consider. A high-quality video of the accident has been recorded by a French cameraman.
It was the first time we had a video of an accident, you know. Normally, an accident happens in the middle of nowhere. Nobody is there with a camera to film it.
The tape clearly shows the plane flying right at the trees at the end of the runway. It doesn't seem to be climbing at all. The cockpit voice recorder offers a confounding clue.
Take off, go run power.
30. 30.
Get me! Hands!
It's clear the crew had no idea there was an obstacle at the end of the runway. Investigators are puzzled. How could a forest take a pilot by surprise? Béchet brings Captain Asselineau in for questioning about the flyover at Habsheim. They need to know what his plan was.
My intention was to carry out a flyover at slow speed.
As a qualified A320 pilot, Claude Béchet is familiar with the plane's capabilities.
Over the airstrip, and we go to Alpha Max.
Very good.
He sees nothing wrong with Captain Asselineau's plan.
It was not bad. Making a slow pass was well planned. And he seemed to me to be very open and very ready to help to work with the investigation commission.
Investigators turn their attention to how Air France prepared the flight crew for the airshow. They discover a memo setting out the rules for all airshow flights. What draws the attention of investigators is the minimum altitude Air France had selected for airshow flyovers: 100 feet. It was in violation of national regulations.
He should have been at 500 feet, as a matter of fact. But there had at that time a tendency for pilots who were making air shows like that to go a little bit lower and sometimes much lower.
Chief Investigator Claude Béchet now wonders if there were any other mistakes in the planning of the flight. He soon learns that Air France's flight division didn't start drawing up a flight plan for the demonstration until less than 48 hours before the airshow. An Air France employee had prepared maps of the airfield for the crew of Flight 296. Investigators find a serious problem. The forest around Habsheim airfield did not show up on the photocopies. The employee who had put together the flight package didn't have an opportunity to discuss it with the crew.
You were using an evacuation chart?
While questioning Asseline, Bechet discovers that the pilots were also given little time to prepare.
Happened then. Here's the flight package. Thanks.
That's highly unusual for an air show.
My co-pilot told me, okay, we make a flight around Mont Blanc, and then we have to make 2 low pass over a small airport, Habsheim. Told me there is nothing special. So for me, it was a normal flight, a normal day.
That preparation had not been complete, and there had been no briefing of the crew by the staff.
Investigators then make an intriguing discovery at the crash site. They measure the height of the trees hit by Flight 296. They discover the average height of the forest to be only 40 feet. This poses an urgent question. How could an Airbus that was supposed to be flying at 100 feet hit trees less than half that height? It is clear to investigators that Flight 296 fatally deviated from its original flight plan, losing altitude before plunging into a forest. But only the black box data can help them understand how and why this had happened. Information from the A320's flight data recorder is recovered within hours of the crash. The device records information about 200 aircraft functions. It paints a detailed picture of how Flight 296 was operating in the final minutes of its journey.
Can be!
We could reconstruct the entire accident. We could live with the crew as the accident was happening.
Investigators make 2 striking observations from the data. The first is that Flight 296 suffered no mechanical breakdowns. The second is that the A320 followed a very different flight path than the one Captain Asseline had planned. Instead of maintaining a stable airspeed and altitude, Flight 296 had slowed down and lost altitude as it performed the flyover. As the A320 crossed the Habsheim airfield, its speed dropped to only 112 knots. That's about as slow as an A320 can fly. The plane's deceleration was so dramatic, it was even visible on the video. Michel Asseline was one of Air France's top pilots. Claude Bechet is hard-pressed to understand how he could have mishandled such a high-profile flight. Pressed further, Asseline explains how the trouble started.
You were using a navigation chart?
Yes, we had some difficulty locating the airfield. Leave the highway to the left, don't we? No, to the right of the highway.
It's slightly to the right of the highway.
There's the airfield. You've got it, have you?
They spotted the airfield too late. So when they did, they reduced the power and they descended.
So they rushed their descent in order to get into position for the flyover.
And they were still slowing down when they reached the airfield.
That's the airfield. You confirm?
Affirmative.
But then another problem emerged. The spectators were lined up on a different runway from the one the crew was heading for. The crew of Air France Flight 296 is ill-prepared for their demonstration flight. In planning for the airshow, Air France only provided the crew with information for runway 2, Habsheim's only paved airstrip. But Captain Asseline sees the crowds aligned on a much shorter, adjacent grass field.
I was expecting a normal runway. At the latest moment, I saw that it was a grass runway.
Captain Asseline lined up with the grass strip.
I had no idea that at the end of the runway was a forest. For me, it was bushes only or something.
Okay, you're at 100 feet there. Watch it. Watch it.
Because they had to rush their descent, by the time Flight 296 got to the airfield, it was flying too fast. To lose speed, Captain Asseline kept the thrust on its lowest power setting, well below the setting pilots normally use for Alpha Max flight. But another serious problem was developing. The aircraft had dropped below 100 feet and was continuing to fall. And the crew didn't seem to notice.
I'm okay there. Disconnect auto throttle.
In a matter of seconds, the altitude had fallen to only 30 feet.
What was extremely clear is that airplane was flying at approximately 30 feet above the ground. Regardless of any other data, this data was extremely important.
Take off, go run power.
No airplane of that size or of any other size should make a flight path that low.
The data is clear. You were at 30 feet, not 100.
I believed I was at 100 feet.
Claude Béchet is still uncertain how the A320 ended up so dangerously close to the ground. Captain Asseline insists his instruments failed him.
Flaps 2.
Quebec November Hotel Habsheim, Fox Echo 984.
Okay. 984.
Captain Asseline was relying on his barometric altimeter. It uses air pressure to measure the plane's distance from the ground. It had to be set to local atmospheric pressure to be accurate.
Quebec November Hotel Habsheim, Fox Echo 984.
Okay. 984. Put in 9.
The cockpit recorder proves that the tower provided the pressure reading and the crew set their instrument. But Asseline insists the altimeter was giving him a false reading.
I tell you, the altimeter said the plane was at 100 feet.
Michel Asseline stated that the barometric altimeter was, in fact, to be precise, 67 feet out. And that is something that he claims led him to be flying at 30 feet instead of at 100 feet.
Investigators are skeptical. Asseline had more than one instrument to give him altitude information. The A320 has a second altimeter that uses radio waves to calculate the plane's distance from the ground. That altimeter displays the altitude on a digital display. But Captain Asseline claims it was difficult to read.
We could not use the radio altimeter because this radio altimeter is digital and nobody can fly by reading numbers. I tried that later on the simulator. I never succeed to do it.
But the radio altimeter has another way of alerting pilots.
I'm okay there.
50.
A digital voice call-out.
Disconnect auto throttle.
50.
But Asseline claims he and his first officer, Pierre Mazière, could not hear it.
Some people say, but you could have heard the radio altimeter saying 30, 30, 50, 40, 30. No, because at that time this aircraft was very, very noisy. And we have the headsets. And we have demonstrated at that time that the radio altimeter warnings or the radio altimeter call-outs, they were not going through the headset.
50.
Despite Asseline's defense, investigators are certain that the crew of Flight 296 mishandled a risky maneuver. Béchet has more questions for Captain Asseline.
What did you do when you saw the trees?
I did what any pilot would do. I tried to climb over them.
Investigators learn that in the final moments before the crash,
30.
Take off, go run power.
Captain Asseline applied full throttle.
When I was waiting for the engine to spool up, that I realized in front of me there were trees. And I was waiting.
But he claims the engines did not respond. And when they finally kicked in, it was too late.
I tell you, the engines did not come on when I gave it full throttle.
Captain Asseline's testimony raises a troubling prospect. If there was a prolonged delay in engine response, it could indicate a critical problem with the A320's turbojets. Captain Asseline is convinced the engines didn't respond quickly enough in the final seconds of the flight. He makes it his mission to prove it. He uncovers an Airbus document warning of a defect on the A320. It says the plane's engine speed could stagnate at low altitude, a condition caused by poor airflow. When this occurs, the engine cannot accelerate. But investigators can find no evidence of such a failure in any of the data from the plane.
Go around power.
In the 5 seconds after Captain Asseline applied full power on the thrust levers, the A320's twin engines had begun to spool up. They reached 84% thrust, close to full power, just before the plane hit the trees.
When you put from idle to full power, you have the impression that nothing happens for a few seconds, and then the power comes. But that was normal, exactly as predicted by the certification.
Investigators are increasingly certain the engines on Flight 296 didn't fail. They find a novel way to verify the data. Video of the crash picked up the distinctive sound of the A320's engines accelerating. By studying that sound, engineers can determine how much power the engines were generating in the final seconds before the crash.
We were able to compare the RPM of the engines from that film and from the flight data recorder. There was nothing wrong with the engines, any of the two engines.
Why? Chief Investigator Claude Béchet has a new headache. Captain Asseline is convinced there is a conspiracy against him. He cuts off all cooperation with the investigation.
Very well.
Investigation committee, I tried to cooperate with them, but I began to be suspicious. And the press, each week, the aircraft is good, the aircraft has nothing, pilot error, pilot error, pilot error. All that was a big, big, big cover-up, my opinion.
Captain Asseline begins a campaign to challenge the French investigation. He appears on British television to make a dramatic assertion.
When I pull the stick to up position, the flight controls, the elevator control go to down position. So on any aircraft, if you ask up, following the order of the pilots, the elevator control goes to up. And not that on that one, it went to down. Why? That would be the good question.
His accusations go to the heart of doubts about the aircraft. That Airbus fly-by-wire system had given the A320's computers too much control. Asseline's claim that the plane didn't follow his instructions is supported by data from the plane's flight recorder. The black box recorded every movement of the pilot's side stick controller. It does show that seconds before the crash, Captain Asseline pulled it back to get the plane's nose up. Investigators compare it with what the plane did in response. They make a perplexing discovery.
He's telling the truth. The elevator moved down.
In the final seconds before the accident, the pilots had desperately tried to pull up. The side stick controls the plane's elevator. Pulling back on it should raise the elevator and pitch the plane upwards.
30.
But that's not what happened on this flight.
One of the strange things about the crash flight, which became apparent when the digital flight recorder was analysed, was that during the last few seconds prior to contact with the trees, the pilot was dragging back on the stick as hard as he could, but the flight surfaces were moving into a position to put the nose down.
Captain Asseline believes the plane's descent triggered an automatic response by the flight computers. Asseline inadvertently brought his plane to within 30 feet of the ground with his landing gear down and his flaps extended. Investigators now wonder if the plane's computer determined that Asseline was landing and initiated the necessary steps to accomplish that.
As the plane leveled up with the airfield, it overflew a little copse of trees, which took the radar altitude momentarily below 30 feet. That would have been sufficient to trigger the flight control system to enter landing mode.
It's possible that in spite of what Captain Asseline was commanding the plane to do, the computer brought the plane's nose down for landing. Investigators must try to determine whether the A320 overrode its pilot at a critical moment. They analyze the data from the flight recorder.
Stop it there.
But to their disappointment...
So was the plane in landing mode or not?
The flight data recorder can't confirm if the plane went into landing mode. The A320 systems are so advanced that the recorder can't track all of the plane's functions. Investigator Claude Béchet comes up with another way to find out. He replicates Asseline's approach to the Habsheim airfield to see how the A320 responds.
Okay, let's start the descent. Power to flight idle. Now put it into Alpha Max. That's it. Gently.
I replayed the accident, but on the longest runway in Toulouse.
Altitude, 40 feet, 35 feet.
We replayed the accident exactly what it was.
Béchet's plan is to descend to 30 feet, as Asseline's A320 did.
Now pull up slightly to level off. Hold it there.
Béchet wants to see if the flight computer puts the plane in landing mode.
Okay, now full thrust. Did you feel that? Alpha protection.
The test flight has triggered a nose-down response from the plane's computers, like the crash of Flight 296. But the plane hadn't gone into landing mode. Instead, the flyover had activated one of the A320's main safety features: stall protection. Due to a lack of airflow over the wings, flying slowly in a nose-high position can cause a plane to lose lift. The A320's computer has been programmed to bring the plane's nose down when it gets close to stalling.
This means that in theory, as long as the flight control system is in operation, the pilot cannot stall the plane.
Béchet concludes the flight computers did override Captain Asseline's command. But he believes that by doing so, it had prevented the plane from stalling and crashing just short of the tree line.
That airplane didn't stall and, let's say, landed on the trees.
The investigation into the crash at Habsheim is coming to an end. Claude Béchet prepares to deliver his verdict.
The conclusion of my report was that the airplane was too low, too slow, and with not enough power.
As far as Claude Béchet is concerned, the report is the final word on the Habsheim tragedy. The case, however, is far from over. The French justice system is moving towards a judgment of Captain Asseline. He is charged with involuntary homicide in the deaths of 3 passengers and faces the prospect of a long prison sentence. But Captain Asseline believes he has found evidence that will exonerate him. He is convinced there was a conspiracy to tamper with the plane's black boxes, to conceal problems with the A320's fly-by-wire technology.
There has been a cover-up with some funny recorders. That's the first point. The second point, they have been changing the content of the recordings.
It all begins, according to Asselineau, at the crash site. An employee of France's Civil Aviation Authority is photographed carrying the A320's flight recorders from the scene. Those same black boxes are presented as evidence at Asselineau's trial. But inexplicably, they look different.
I had a chance to see the black boxes held by the court. But when I see the state they're in, they're old boxes, full of scratches, dusty, with chipped paint. I think, wait, these can't be the boxes from the crash. The plane was new. They're not the right ones.
Captain Asselineau hires a Swiss criminology institute to compare the two photographs. Its conclusion, they're not the same flight recorders. Captain Michel Asselineau claims the black box data from his flight has been tampered with. But investigator Claude Béchet rejects the accusations as outrageous.
They were trying to prove that the tapes had been tampered with, which we could not understand because every recorder expert knew that it was physically impossible.
But there is one expert who believes the black boxes are suspicious. Ray Davis is a former head of flight recorder analysis at Britain's Air Accidents Investigation Branch. He has been hired by British television to review the French investigators' work.
It was a little bit of an eye-opener in a way, in that prior to reading the report, I had a totally different impression of the possible causes of this accident, whereas when I read the report, there were so many anomalies and questions raised by the report that my whole attitude towards the accident changed completely.
Davis discovers evidence that could vindicate Asselineau. It raises questions about when the crew applied power to try to overfly the trees.
30.
Take off, go around power.
30.
While studying the black box data, Davis comes across a curious inconsistency. French investigators had synchronized the black boxes with a transcript of air traffic control communications. Davis examines the last conversation the pilots had with the tower before the crash.
984. Okay, 984. Put in 984.
It was recorded by both air traffic control and the plane's own black box.
Quebec November Hotel at St. Box Echo 984. Quebec November Hotel at St. Box Echo 984.
Ray Davis discovers a time discrepancy between the two recordings, amounting to a loss of several seconds. According to the black box data, the aircraft was 5 seconds from impact with the trees when Captain Asselineau commanded full thrust from the engines. But according to Ray Davis's analysis, this actually took place 4 seconds earlier. This 4-second gap dramatically changes the calculus of the accident. It's the difference between a normal delay in engine response and a serious malfunction.
Asselineau claims that on this particular occasion, the delay was more than he expected. And depending upon which side of the argument you come down at as to whether or not the 4-second delay in the digital flight data recording was real or not, then, you know, he's either an idiot or he's right.
The French justice system does not believe that Asselineau is right. After multiple appeals, Michel Asselineau is convicted of involuntary homicide and sentenced to 10 months in prison. Still, the controversy over the black boxes and the missing 4 seconds lingers on. It promises to forever cloud the results of Claude Béchet's investigation.
The public opinion thought probably, oh, well, there was so much at stake, you know. It was the future of all European aviation industry, which was at stake. So they managed to tamper the tapes so they could blame the pilot and not the airplane. But this is just impossible.
The investigation into the Habsheim accident made several recommendations. It calls for passengers to be banned on all demonstration flights. It also calls for better reconnaissance of airfields by flight crews. And they want airline procedures to be reviewed to ensure they conform with official regulations concerning altitude. Michel Asselineau went on to a career as a teacher and inventor in the aviation industry. He continues to appeal his conviction and has devoted much of his life to clearing his name. The tragedy at Habsheim would have little impact on Airbus industry. The A320 would go on to become one of the most successful commercial aircraft in history, selling over 750 planes in its first 10 years. And fly-by-wire technology would be safely adopted by a new generation of passenger aircraft. Just minutes from Strasbourg Airport, an Airbus A320 slams into a mountaintop.
Delta Alpha, your position?
There are survivors.
And I'll panic because I'm going to burn.
But they are still in grave danger. It's bitterly cold, and what they don't realize is that no one knows where they are.
They could be anywhere in there.
Expect this in the jungle or the rainforest, but not in a highly populated area.
Before investigators can begin searching for what caused the crash of Air Inter Flight 148, they must first find the plane. January the 20th, 1992. Air Inter Flight 148 has departed from Lyon, France.
124.905, thank you.
Captain Christian Hequet and First Officer Joël Charubin are experienced pilots with over 12,000 hours of flying time between them. The flight is a short hop between Lyon in central France and the city of Strasbourg in the mountainous Alsace region. The French airline Air Inter caters mostly to business travelers and prides itself on being timely. Crews are motivated to avoid delays, as former Air Inter pilot Gérard Arnoux explains.
We were famous for a very short turnaround. And the faster we flew, the better wages we got.
Have we been flying for 35 minutes yet?
41 minutes.
The crew is flying an Airbus A320, one of the most technologically advanced commercial airplanes in the world. Even before takeoff, the pilots programmed the Autopilot to land on a specific runway in Strasbourg. The cockpit of the A320 is also very different from other planes. Instead of analog gauges, the pilots look mostly at digital displays.
Strasbourg, good evening. Runway News 05. Transition level 50. Wind 040 at 18 knots. Visibility 10 kilometers.
A recording from Strasbourg Airport informs the crew of a change in plan. Due to high winds and poor winter weather, they'll have to land on an alternate runway.
05 in service.
Not the one programmed into the autopilot.
05. What sort of wind are they giving us?
18 knots.
18 knots.
Captain Hecke doesn't like the idea of changing runways.
No chance.
He was hoping to use runway 23, an approach that provides the autopilot with a precise navigational fix. The new runway, runway 05, is surrounded by mountainous terrain that can interrupt radio signals sent to the autopilot.
You know, if we go with the runway 05 procedure, we... Oh, no.
Captain Hecke suggests a compromise.
I'm putting back runway 23. Otherwise, I couldn't make the ILS interception.
He'll program the autopilot to fly towards runway 23. But near the airport, the captain will take over the controls and make a visual landing on runway 05.
You're taking 23 then?
Yes!
Ladies and gentlemen, we are commencing our descent. We ask you to please return to your seats.
Nicholas Skorias is a university graduate student.
It was a quiet day. I was expecting to go to see my girlfriend in Strasbourg, so I was very happy.
Roger 854, proceed to GTQ air level 140, contact Reims. Delta Alpha, Strasbourg.
Yes, we intend to proceed to do an ILS on runway 23, then an indirect for runway 05 after that.
The Strasbourg controller considers the captain's plan.
Delta Alpha.
He warns that there will likely be a delay due to heavy traffic.
Given that we're going to have 3 takeoffs on 05, you risk waiting in a stack at 5,000 feet.
We're not going to mess about like that, descending at full speed. If they had warned us in advance, cripes!
Delta Alpha, Strasbourg.
I hear you.
Aware of the captain's frustration, the controller offers assistance.
If you want, I can take you with the radar to lead you to Andlo at 5,000.
Andlo is a navigational point on the approach to runway 05. It helps pilots align the plane for landing.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, yeah. Okay, then, turn left to heading 230 degrees. 148.
Turn left to heading 230 degrees.
There you are. That will save you some time.
Since runway 05 doesn't allow for a full autopilot approach, the captain must calculate the angle of descent on his own.
That makes 3.3 degrees.
Donc 3,3, c'est tout à fait normal, oui.
3.3 degrees is a normal flight angle that provides a good slope for landing.
Doucement, la bonne pente, voilà.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing our descent.
The flight from Lyon to Strasbourg was quite short. I think 50 or 45 minutes. Nothing special. It was very natural and very ordinary.
Thank you.
Turn left, steer 90. 090 degrees, Delta Alpha.
The controller talks Flight 148 through the last turn to align the plane with the runway, now 25 kilometers away. Then, First Officer Cherubin notices the plane is slightly off course.
We're headed inside. You're inside there. You should have started with 070.
Yeah.
At least that much.
The controller also notices that the plane is off course.
Air Inter Delta Alpha.
It has missed aligning itself with ANDLO, the runway's electronic guidepost.
Delta Alpha, you're passing to the right of Anlo.
Nevertheless, he authorizes the landing.
Authorized for final approach 05.
Delta Alpha.
The captain initiates the landing sequence.
Flaps towards 2.
Flaps towards 2. Flaps at 2.
Gear down.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to land in a few minutes.
Heke notices that the plane is traveling too fast, so he extends the speed brakes. They disrupt airflow over the wing, which helps create more drag to slow the plane.
You have to watch our descent.
The approach axis.
The first officer is more concerned with their horizontal position in relation to the runway.
It was 60. Check it out.
Wait.
But before the crew can adjust their course,
Delta Alpha, your position? Air Inter Delta Alpha, Strasbourg.
the crash is catastrophic. The A320 has flown into the side of a mountain.
Delta Alpha, your position?
Flight 148 is no longer on radar, nor responding to radio contact. An emergency is declared at Strasbourg Airport.
This is the last hit we got. We were flying about 20 kilometers away from the airport.
Officials need to pinpoint the crash site, but it's not as easy as it might seem. The airport's radar is not recorded. There has been no signal from the plane's emergency beacon, and surprisingly, no one has reported seeing a plane go down.
It could be anywhere in here.
The proposed search area covers more than 20 square kilometers of dense forest just outside Strasbourg. Nicolas Scoria survives the crash of Air Inter Flight 148 with only minor injuries.
I took off my seatbelt, I get up, I tried to find my suitcase in the lockers, but there wasn't any lockers. I realized that I was alive. It was a crash. I saw a fire in front of me, and I panicked because I said to myself, I'm going to burn. I went to the back of the plane, of what remained of the plane. I found some other survivors.
Come on! It's gonna blow!
I was afraid of the explosion. I was panic.
With the smell of leaking jet fuel in the air, the survivors move away from the burning plane.
We stayed together, waiting for the first aid.
But the wait will be longer than anyone might expect.
The first reaction that we have after the crash was, okay, in half an hour, 1 hour, most, and the worst, okay, the rescue team will be here. And it wasn't here.
1 hour after the crash, rescuers still have no idea where the wreckage lies. Scourias and the others now face a new ordeal. surviving sub-zero temperatures in a dark and isolated forest. 2.5 hours after Flight 148 disappeared from radar near Strasbourg Airport, the missing plane has still not been located. Amidst growing tension, the French Aviation Bureau, the BEA, sends in its lead investigator, Jean Pariès.
I immediately called my two main investigators, and we organized the GO team, and we got prepared to rush to the site as soon as this site was located somewhere.
The delay feels like an eternity.
A little bit surprisingly long. We can expect this in the jungle or the rainforest, but not exactly in a highly dense populated area like the Strasbourg area.
With no help in sight, Skouras returns to the wreckage to look for more survivors.
I think that some people that die could have survived if the first aid come sooner.
Nearly 1,000 people search for the missing plane. But 3 hours after the crash, there's still no sign of it. Frustrated, Skouras goes looking for help. He stumbles into a TV crew trying to find the crash. But with no wreckage in sight, they react with skepticism.
They didn't expect survivors from an airplane crash.
Hey, you have to believe me!
They didn't believe that I was one of the survivors, but believe me, I was, because my face was black due to the smoke, the kerosene, and so on.
Come on!
The journalists follow him back to the crash site, where they discover 8 other survivors. Finally, the first rescuers arrive. The crash site is located near the top of the 2,500-foot Mont Saint-Odile, 19 kilometers from the runway.
They found us after 4 hours and 30 minutes. So it was a mess. I was very, very disappointed that at 20 kilometers from Strasbourg, and they couldn't find us.
A total of 87 passengers and crew have died, including the pilot and co-pilot. The survivors begin to tell their stories, but no one reports anything that might explain why the plane crashed.
I don't know what happened. We were landing. I lost all consciousness. We must have hit the trees.
Bob McIntosh, an American NTSB investigator, arrives at the crash site.
The BEA of France recognized the international attention would be on this accident, even though it was a domestic accident. He invited a group of international accident investigators to come and participate.
Welcome to the team.
The first priority for investigators is to retrieve the plane's black boxes.
We have not removed the recorders yet.
With the boxes trapped in the burning tail section, any delay could prove costly.
We're very anxious about the state of the tape inside. Will it be possible to use it? Will we get the critical information we need?
In France, aviation accidents are also investigated by the justice system. Pariès and his team are not allowed access to the site until judicial officials secure the black boxes.
I had a visual picture of the gendarme, transport police standing around keeping us away from the wreckage for a while. And we're very suspicious of these international observers.
Maybe we should wait.
Even taking photographs, which was somewhat surprising to us.
In a previous crash, the crash of Air France Flight 296 in 1988, investigators waited 10 days before turning the black boxes over to police. Rumors persisted that these boxes had been tampered with. This time, police are keeping investigators at bay.
I can recall seeing the glowing embers and seeing the flight recorder sitting there and not being able to intervene and say, get that thing cooled down as soon as you can.
After midnight, the boxes are retrieved from the plane and sent for analysis. Investigators can only hope it's not too late.
They was extremely hot. They looked damaged, they looked burned.
On découvre l'Airbus disloqué à 500 mètres.
In the light of day, investigators get some of their first clues from the crash site itself. They discover why the plane's emergency locator beacon didn't send a signal.
It was actually destroyed by the impact.
The beacon is located inside the cockpit and is designed to start working after a crash. Its failure suggests an unusually forceful impact with the ground.
We had this first feeling that the descent was abnormally steep.
Investigators examine the engines to see if they may have stalled before impact.
If you find the blades curved and a lot of wood sucked inside the engines, then you understand that the engines were working properly.
And that's exactly what they find. The plane clearly had power, yet it plowed steeply into a mountainside without ever sending out a distress signal. Investigators are puzzled. They hope that the box which recorded the plane's flight data will help them solve the mystery.
Those particular recorders had the best survival record of any recorders. They were the top of the line as far as survivability is concerned.
The black box is designed to survive temperatures up to 1100 degrees Celsius for half an hour. The tape recorder inside is protected by a capsule filled with water.
When the recorder heats up, the water turns to steam, absorbing the energy, and actually vents out through a little hole in the crash enclosure.
But when the flight data recorder is opened, investigators make a troubling discovery.
DFDR was totally damaged. Impossible to read anything from it.
It was subjected to heat beyond the 30 minutes. The recorder was just never designed to withstand that kind of sustained heat.
And so we were very disappointed.
There's now only one hope for recovering the plane's flight data, a device called a Quick Access Recorder, or QAR. Maintenance workers use the QAR to access the plane's computers, but it also records some flight data. Unlike the black boxes, the QAR is stored near the cockpit.
Quick access recorders are not protected at all. They're up in the front end of the aircraft, typically in the electronics bay. They're generally destroyed just from the impact damage.
Investigators are encouraged to discover that in this case, the QAR has survived. But on closer examination, their optimism turns to frustration.
The last 20 centimeters of the tape were burned and stretched and were damaged to the point that we could not use them into a machine. We couldn't read it.
Investigators are desperate to retrieve the data, so they take a chance on an experimental technique. Known as the garnet technique, a light is shone through a mineral lens made of garnet.
Use a garnet stone to visualize the magnetic pulses that are actually recorded on the tape.
The special lens helps the technicians differentiate between the positive and negative magnetic pulses, which translate as binary digits, or bits.
There's 768 bits per second, so that's a lot of ones and zeros. You have to be very precise in moving the tape under the lens or the garnet to make sure you don't miss a bit or read the same bit twice, you know? So it's difficult.
Analyzing the data is even more painstaking.
It took about a day to read a second of recording. Any additional second recovered could reveal something that would make a difference.
The effort to retrieve all the QAR data could take a month or more. In the meantime, the focus of the investigation shifts to the cockpit voice recorder. It was positioned just above the other black box.
The cockpit voice recorder, which was just inches away, but outside of the ashes, had air passing over it, survived.
Runway 23. Otherwise...
The recording reveals the captain's anxiety early on in the flight.
You're taking 23 then?
Yes!
Investigators know that landing on runway 05 requires what's called a non-precision approach. That means pilots receive electronic guidance only on their horizontal position, left and right. They get no guidance when it comes to altitude.
The non-precision approach is significantly less accurate. Why, it's not really difficult, but they are less comfortable.
05. What sort of wind are they giving us?
The non-precision approach increases the demands on the pilots. Investigators can also hear that the captain had concerns about landing on runway 05.
48 Delta Alpha, you are number 1 for QAR DME runway 05.
Runway 05. 10 nautical. That won't work.
It's a lot of distress over a non-precision approach.
Wondering what can cause such distress, investigators research pilot training at Air Inter. They find that most pilots did not have extensive training making non-precision landings in the new A320.
I think we should have had double the training compared to an older plane.
Investigators ask the airline for detailed records on the pilot's history of runway approaches. They're intrigued by what they discover. Captain Hecke had landed at Strasbourg countless times, but he had never landed an A320 there using a non-precision approach.
I'm not going to mess around like that descending at full speed.
Clearly, the captain was uneasy about having to execute a landing he had never made before.
I think the captain was worried about making it in a minimum amount of time, and the minimum amount of delay.
Have we been flying for 35 minutes yet?
And the co-pilot was worried about not getting in trouble by offending the captain.
At least that much.
More research into the pilot's work history offers yet another revelation. While the two pilots had flown more than 12,000 hours between them, they were both still relatively new to the highly advanced A320.
It's 05 in service.
The aviation community misunderstood the magnitude of changes brought by the new Airbus A320.
The captain had only 162 hours in the A320, and the co-pilot even less, just 61 hours.
Behind this accident scenario, there's an issue of confidence of the crew in themselves, in the aircraft.
18 knots. No chance.
They were not prepared, really, to fly in this kind of condition.
If they had warned us in advance, cripes!
Investigators conclude that the crew's training was insufficient. But that alone does not explain the crash.
Merde!
Investigators search for other factors in the crash of Flight 148. They review the conversations between the crew and air traffic controllers.
If you want, I can give you radar headings and take you to Anlo at 5,000.
Yeah, that's good.
The radar vector makes flying easier. The captain was happy because it was reducing his workload.
Turn left, steer 90.
With the controller's assistance, this landing should have been very simple. But when investigators reconstruct the plane's trajectory using radar information from various stations around the airport, they discover a shocking error.
The 090 heading started here.
090, 0 degrees, Delta Alpha.
But it won't take them to Andlo. Last radar vector the controller gave was incorrect. It sent them...
Thank you.
...closer to the mountain.
They were, of course, because of following the heading they got from the radar vectoring, they found themselves in this undershoot situation.
You're inside there. You should have started with 070.
Yeah.
Investigators are also troubled by the controller's choice of words when he warned the pilots, incorrectly, that they were headed to the right.
Delta Alpha, you're passing to the right of Anlo.
From the pilot's perspective, the plane was on the left side of the runway, not the right. It could only add to their confusion.
Le contrôleur, en fait, il a fait un...
It was very poor guidance because he didn't employ the usual terminology.
Et il n'a pas utilisé la phraséologie standard.
Investigators recommend that controllers use only compass points when giving directions. Never the words right and left. The controller's mistakes clearly brought the plane closer to the mountain.
Turn left, steer 90. 090.
But once again, investigators feel they don't have the whole story.
It's not something totally abnormal to start a descent from this situation.
Flaps towards 2.
Flaps towards 2.
It's not what you expected to do every day, but it's not outside the tolerance of the concept of this approach.
Gear down.
When investigators study the plane's reconstructed flight path, they discover something more alarming than the plane's horizontal misdirection. As it circled the mountain, the plane inexplicably entered a dangerously steep and rapid descent.
Perhaps 2.5 times the normal rate of descent.
That's lethal at that altitude.
Without the steep descent, they would have cleared the mountain.
If the vertical trajectory had been correct, they would have no problem at all.
Finding the cause of that sudden descent is now key to understanding why 87 people died in one of the most advanced passenger planes on Earth.
Authorized for final approach 05.
The descent was initiated at 1800 hours, 19 minutes and 38 seconds. That
Delta Alpha
is the point of no return.
By studying Flight 148's trajectory, investigators determined that the rapid descent began 60 seconds before the crash.
Delta Alpha.
There is no indication on tape that the descent was deliberate. How it happened and why the crew didn't notice is a mystery.
It should be a no-brainer. Keep track of the altitude.
The cockpit altimeter gives pilots a constant readout of their altitude.
Altimeter, that's a very precise instrument. They become very reliable. They're accurate to within 5 or 10 feet.
Ignoring it would be a major error in flying protocol.
Flaps towards 2.
The recording reveals just one single remark from the crew about their descent.
We have to watch our descent.
It occurred 16 seconds before the crash. The captain had just extended the speed brakes.
The aircraft was accelerating abnormally. The captain started to realize there was something wrong with the descent rate.
But the first officer changed the subject.
The approach axis. We're hitting the axis a half point off.
There. It was 60. Check it out.
He refocused the captain's attention on the lateral situation rather than the vertical situation, which was the main problem, of course. And they both failed to recognize this situation.
I think they were planning they were going to break out of the clouds so they'd be able to see the runway, and they wouldn't need to do the full instrument approach.
It was 60. Check it.
But the plane never left the clouds.
There's an old adage in aviation. Rocks have been known to hide out in those clouds.
It now seems clear that the crew was not monitoring their altitude closely enough. But a bigger mystery remains.
We can only guess why.
What caused that deadly descent? After months of work, investigators may finally have the answer. All the available flight data from the damaged quick access recorder has been recovered.
We were very anxious to be able to read as much as we could.
The data confirms that just before the crash, the plane was speeding towards the ground at an extremely high rate, 3,300 feet per minute. It also confirms that the angle of descent was dangerously steep, much greater than the 3.3 degrees selected by the captain.
3 degrees.
That's quite a difference.
Investigators now wonder, did the autopilot malfunction? Did it somehow fail to obey the captain's safe descent angle and send the plane into a deadly nosedive?
But what state was it in before the accident?
Unfortunately, the flight control unit which houses the autopilot is too badly damaged to provide any definitive answers.
We could never demonstrate that this FCU on this aircraft during this flight functioned properly or not.
But then, when he returns to studying the flight data, Paris discovers something that may finally reveal the cause of the crash. He notices a similarity between two key numbers: the plane's vertical speed, 3,300 feet per minute, and the intended flight path angle, 3.3 degrees.
Coincidence?
Paris uses a flight simulator to test a new theory.
Can you show me a descent of 3,300 feet per minute?
He believes that the similarity is no mere coincidence. On the autopilot, there are two descent modes: flight path angle and vertical speed. But they are both displayed on the same window. So 3,300 is abbreviated to 33.
Now, show me a flight angle of minus 3.3 degrees.
The problem on this aircraft was that the two values were visible on the same window and controlled by the same knob.
3.3 degrees.
Minus 3.3 degrees.
Paris strongly suspects that the confusing display tripped up Captain Hackey.
So it wouldn't be hard to make that mistake, would it?
The confusion is quite easy between the two modes if you don't do it carefully.
If the captain failed to push the mode selector knob, then entering 33 would not have initiated a safe 3.3 degree angle of descent. Instead, it would have put the plane into a deadly rate of descent of 3,300 feet per minute. Two months after the crash, another Air Inter plane enters a dangerously steep descent for the same reason.
The crew only discovered the problem when they broke out of the clouds.
Those pilots also confused the plane's flight path angle with its vertical speed.
They were lucky enough to have a much higher cloud base so they could correct the problem.
Further research reveals an industry-wide problem with the A320.
Many people confuse these modes, especially during training, and many of them fell in the trap even after the training.
Eager to test his new theory, Jean Paris programs a simulator with all the known data from Flight 148.
Okay.
He then inputs the same rate of descent he believes the Air Inter pilots selected. If Paris is correct, The simulation will end with the plane hitting the mountain. But it doesn't.
We're missing something.
Strangely, this didn't lead to a crash. Every approach would overfly this obstacle by significant margins.
Have we factored in the wind?
We started to work on other alternate hypotheses.
Let's try again, but initiate the turn sooner.
But nothing was really credible.
No matter how hard he tries, Paris cannot simulate the crash. Unable to explain why, he turns to the plane's manufacturer for help.
Thanks for bringing this to my
After
attention.
much research, an Airbus designer comes to Paris with an explanation about a little-known element of the Autopilot's design. In emergency situations where the A320 needs to change direction quickly, the Autopilot is programmed to reverse the plane's direction at twice the normal rate.
The reaction of the Autopilot would be much faster. And these cases were typically when you were descending and asking the Autopilot to climb, or climbing and asking the Autopilot to descend. We immediately went back to the data at the very second at which the descent was commanded by the crew.
Gear down.
Paris discovers a tragic coincidence.
Sadly, we found that at this very second, there was turbulence.
There was an ascent. It's very slight, but there it is.
The momentary turbulence caused the plane to climb slightly.
And this led to a positive 600 feet per minute vertical speed for maybe half a second.
It was during that same half second that the crew commanded the plane to descend.
It was 60, check it out.
The Autopilot read this as an emergency requiring a blazingly fast descent.
That could be it.
Investigators now contemplate a terrible thought. Could a random gust of wind, hitting at exactly the wrong split second, have been the difference between life and death?
Here it comes.
And we got a crash.
Paris's theory explains every aspect of the crash. The crew's confusion with the Autopilot display
3.3 degrees.
caused the plane to descend dangerously close to the mountain. Turbulence and an obscure safety feature brought it even closer. It was a fatal combination.
It's a fascinating lesson about the random dimension of accidents. Half a second before, half a second later, they wouldn't have the accident.
The discovery of a confusing cockpit display has enormous implications for the entire industry.
The flight instrumentation of aircraft like the DC-10, MD-11s, the 747s and so on, all the Boeing products and all the commuter products that were using that avionics suite had this vulnerability about it.
Investigators now face a daunting question affecting aircraft safety around the world. If the design of the Autopilot interface isn't changed, how many more people could die? There's mounting evidence that the design of the Autopilot interface on Airbus A320s led the Air Inter pilots to accidentally dial in a dangerous rate of descent.
3.3 degrees.
We felt a need to start the industry to work on this.
The plane's manufacturer, Airbus, responds immediately.
The main change, which was very quickly made, was to change the display window.
With the new design, if a pilot selects a vertical speed of 3,300, the entire 4-digit number is displayed.
So the confusion between an angle and a vertical speed was no longer possible.
For investigators, only one mystery remains. All Airbus A320 jets are designed to be equipped with a safety device known as a Ground Proximity Warning System, or GPWS.
which is a downward-looking single-purpose radar that tells you how high you are above the ground directly beneath the airplane. And if it gets to be too low, it'll set off a warning.
Pull up, terrain. Pull up.
But Captain Hackey
We have to watch our descent.
never received a warning for one very simple reason. His A320 didn't have that alarm.
The first question, of course, was why the aircraft was not equipped.
So it's not part of the minimum equipment list.
The Air and Terror Management had decided they did not like the false warnings that had been produced by GPWS equipment.
Normally, most planes fly slower than 250 knots when under 10,000 feet, but we flew at 350 knots until the final approach. So at those speeds, GPWS was always giving off false alarms.
Dans ces conditions, parce qu'il générait des fausses alarmes.
This decision, while legal, prevented the pilots from having one last line of defense before crashing into the mountain.
C'est pas possible d'imaginer un instant.
It's impossible to imagine that the pilot wouldn't have pulled up if he'd heard the alarm.
We should have a GPWS on commercial flights. In any case, yes. That's an obvious conclusion.
The report will list these causes: flight deck aerodynamics.
Investigators conclude that there was no single cause for the crash of Flight 148.
Training, lack of GPWS.
The tragedy involved an ill-fated combination of many different weaknesses in the airline industry.
We made 35 or so recommendations, including pilot training, about the ground proximity warning system, and so on.
The recommendations lead to sweeping changes. Pilots must now have more A320 training before getting behind the controls.
One of the two pilots now need to have at least 300 hours on the plane. They estimated that 300 hours were enough.
Another change, the design of a more heat-resistant black box.
The FAA did a test, did some studies what the thermal characteristics of post-crash fires were, came up with a value of 260 degrees C for 10 hours.
Delta Alpha, your position? Air Inter, Delta Alpha, Strasbourg.
As a result of the Strasbourg crash, the A320 is now a safer plane.
You can only get this change if there is what people perceive to be a good reason. And sadly, a good reason is still an accident.
But improved aviation technology is still no substitute for well-trained, well-prepared pilots.
There's an old axiom in aviation that you taught early on, that never let an airplane take you somewhere that your brain hasn't visited at least 5 minutes ahead of time. This is an excellent example of a flight crew that didn't follow that particular axiom.